I'm Danny STAG. Welcome to Power Rock Guitar System. Blues rock made easier. You know, the blues has been influencing people in rock and roll since the very beginning. Jimi Hendrix, Eric Clapton, AC/DC, Zeppelin. And you know, basically all they did was take the blues that existed long ago in the 40s and stuff, and they added their own attitude, their image, you know, and rock and roll lyrics and stuff. But basically it was just the blues with like a attitude, and it created what we call hard rock, which when you think about it is really blues metal. So if you want to play blues guitar, there's a couple things you need to know. First of all, you don't have to worry about having blazing chops to be able to have a good time playing blues rock guitar. And second, and even more important, is the fact that blues is a feeling. The old saying is true, you know, it's something that you feel. You can't fake the blues, you know. So blues is the one type of music that you have to really feel in your heart to be able to play. And you know, no matter how much you learn about guitar, it's still going to come down to the fact that where you got to play maybe one note and put a lot of feeling into it. And you know, it sounds like Zen or something, but it's true. Less is more. You don't have to get up to play a solo and try to blow every note you ever learned in your life and play a million notes to try to impress anybody. It doesn't really matter. So even if you don't want to play the blues guitar, what I'm going to teach you in this video will definitely make it easier for you to solo in a lot of different keys, and it'll give you new freedom as far as you know, when you're soloing. So who knows? Maybe the blues will grab a hold of your soul too and change the way you play forever. I sure hope so. Okay, let's get started. Now, the first thing we got to do, I know it's boring, but you got to tune to me. So here's an E. Okay, you got that? Now A. Exciting, isn't it? Okay, that should be long enough. D. That's my favorite string. G. Okay, B. And the high E. Okay, first thing I'm going to show you is the Pentatonic Scale. It's a 5-note scale. That's how it gets its name, pentatonic. You know, like a pentagon is a 5-sided thing. It's, I'm going to show you an A, because that's in the middle of the neck and it's easy to see. It's a 5-note scale, and these are the 5 notes. Starting with your 3rd finger on the 5th fret on the low E string at the A note right here. 5 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now continuing up to the higher octave, you would go. And then you can play up here, and then here, and down this way. Okay, now almost all blues is based on that lick or variations of it. This is the very beginning one. It's just, we're going to call it the basic blues scale. And there's a lick that's associated with this scale that somebody showed me when I was about 14, and I swear it opened up millions of different possibilities for me. This lick, you take the 3rd finger on the G string, and you bend it up, and then you hit this note right here on the B string with this finger, and you bar it, and you play the high E string as well. So what you end up with is this, downstrokes, right? Okay, now adding to that, we do this, and we do this, and we end up with, okay? Now, this also continues up here like this. See that? Okay, now that's the basic blues scale. Now in What Love Can Be on the first Kingdom Come album, I did that scale right at the beginning of the solo, and I also did that lick that I showed you. It goes like this. Okay? Now that's the basic blues scale. Now, what I call the modified blues scale is taking that basic blues scale, the 5-note one, and adding half steps. You're adding an E flat and you're adding an A flat in there. So what you end up with is this. You see that? And continuing up, you would be. So it's basically this. You can finger it this way. You're just adding those half steps in the middle. So if you added some of that stuff to the basic blues lick, like you don't necessarily have to play those the E flat and the A flat. You can also play the notes that are in the minor scale. This being a minor scale, right? You can add those notes. So what you end up with is something like this. You see what I mean? Okay. Now that's the modified blues scale. Now the modified blues riff, from the riff I showed you before, this one, you would be going. You see that? You're playing the 9 and the 6 and the 7 in there like this. Okay, so that's the basic modified blues scale. Now, there's another thing that's called a relative scale. Now, what it is like if you were playing in A minor, you would be using this scale because it's got the minor third in it, the one I just showed you. I know, that's fast. Don't worry about it. Okay, now that's because it's got the minor third in it. Now, if you were playing in A major, you would need to play major thirds. Now, instead of worrying about, where the major third is and all that, there's an easier way. You're playing the exact same fingering that you were playing before, only your root position of this third finger, the starting position, is going to be at F sharp now. Now, you're still in A, but it looks like it's an F sharp minor scale, but it's relative to A major. So what you've got is this. You've got. See, if I play that A root, and you hear that root, the root is now on this finger. Instead of it being on this finger like it was when we played it here, it's on this finger now just because you've moved your hand, but you're still playing basically the same scale. So you're going like this. Now, another way to play that is up here. It's a different fingering, but it's still the same scale. It's just an octave higher. See, here's the A, and you're going. But that sounds weird when I stop on that F sharp, right? It doesn't sound like it fits as well. But if I stop on the A, this note, it makes perfect sense. And then you do like a B.B. King kind of a thing. See, that's where a lot of B.B. King stuff is based on that scale. Now you can play the whole, everything I showed you on the other one, on the basic blues scale, you can play it inverted that way, playing it with the F sharp minor as the basis. Okay, now, if you want to modify that scale to have what you would call a relative modified blues scale, for lack of a better term, you would just add, like I did before, half steps all in between that basic pentatonic system. So what you'd end up with there would be like this. Now, a perfect example of that would be in Red House by Jimi Hendrix. When he does this lick, it's towards it in the intro of the song, he goes. See that right there? That's exactly what I just showed you. You're just playing that same scale, only you're adding half steps in there. So what you got so far is the basic blues scale, the modified basic blues scale, the relative blues scale, and the modified relative blues scale. So that's a good place to start. Now just work on those for a while. Okay, let's do those 4 scales again real slow. First, the basic blues scale in A. You can also finger it this way. Okay, now the basic blues lick that I showed you before with the bend in it and the you're barring here with this finger and you're bending here real slow. Okay, and now the modified basic scale where we added some half steps in there, you would be playing the E flat and the A flat in there as well. It's like this. Okay, and then the relative blues scale, which was the exact same thing as the basic blues scale, only your starting point with this finger, the 3rd finger, is an F sharp instead of an A. So you're starting down here in F sharp. Now you're using the nut, just pretend that's a fret. Don't worry about the fact that it's an open string. Just play it the same way, like as if you were going to finger this note, but you're not really doing it. You're like this. See that? See, there's the root, the A. Okay, now that's that one. Now you can still do that blues lick in that relative scale too. Like if it's in A, you just play that blues lick I showed you up here in A, right? You do it down here in F sharp. See, it's the exact same thing. Okay, now to modify that scale, all you do is add half steps in between that pentatonic form like we did with the basic blues scale. It's still exactly the same, only you're just going to move it around. So what you end up with there would be this. And then up here in the other octave, a good example of that scale would be from Red House by Jimi Hendrix. It's a little fast, but it's the same notes. He goes like this. It's in A, it's a blues in A, and he does this lick. And that's that scale right there. So basically, you have the basic blues, relative blues, modified basic blues, and modified relative in no particular order. Okay, now we've covered some basic scales, and the next thing we need to do is talk about rhythm. Now, rhythm I divide into 2 things. One thing that you could call the left hand would be chords. Now, I would suggest that if you don't already know chords, basic chords, that you go out and get like maybe a Mel Bay chord book or something like that and learn the basic chords and learn the difference between, you know, a major and a minor chord and a minor 7 and a dominant 7 and different things like that so that you know. But just in case you don't already know that, I'm going to show you in a real simple way about chords. Now, a chord is major or minor based mainly on whether the third is a major third or a minor third in relationship to the root. That just means if it's the 3rd note in a major scale or the 3rd note in a minor scale. I'm going to show you a major triad in A. All that means it's a 3-note thing, a triad. There's the root, the 3rd, and the 5th. Now, that would be this right here. These three notes. Root, third, fifth. Okay, now that is the first inversion because the root's on the bottom, the third, which is the next highest note, is second in the chord, and the fifth is the highest note in the chord. So that's first inversion, root, third, fifth, stacked up like that. Now the reason they call it an inversion is because if you invert the notes differently, you get second inversion and third inversion. There's only three notes, so there's only three different ways you could do it, right? First inversion is this, root, third, fifth. Second inversion has the third on the bottom, and then the fifth, and then the root, like this. Same exact three notes, an A, a C sharp, and an E. Now here we have C sharp, E, A. That's second inversion. Now this second inversion is one of the most common chord formations that Hendrix used in a lot of his songs. Like in Little Wing, when he does the, like a C chord in Little Wing, looks like this. Now that's the second inversion of a C chord. And then off of that, you can do all kinds of interesting stuff, like these kind of licks that are real Hendrixy. Here's your C, right? Okay, and now the third inversion would just be having the fifth on the bottom, and then the third, and then the root. Like, that's like a D chord type of chord in A. Okay, so that's just inversions. And now, when I play blues, most people, when they play blues, they use a seventh chord. It's the dominant seven. Now that chord looks like this. Like in A, it would look like this. There's a root, a major third, and the dominant seven. Now, that chord in D would be the D here. And in E would be here. Now the reason I'm showing you that is because the blues is, most blues is what's called a 1-4-5. And what they mean is, okay, now if in the A scale, the fourth note of the scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's a D. Okay? So that's a fourth above the A. Now, the fifth note in the scale is in E. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's the 5. The 5 chord has its root in the fifth note of that scale. So it's 5, 4, 1. Now, a 1-4-5 blues would basically go like this. 1, 4, 5, 1. Okay, now I have a favorite inversion that I use when I'm playing blues. It's got the third on the bottom, the seventh, then a 9, which is really the second note in the scale, but it's an octave higher, so it's the 9th note. You know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, ending the scale, 9, starting another scale again. So it's the same position. I don't know if you've noticed, but if you look at a diminished chord in your Mel Bay book that I hope you have and you learned everything in, a diminished chord in A would be like this, right? Now you move that chord down, the whole thing over a string, downward like this. It's the same exact finger position, but the key to this is this finger should be on the major third. So if you're playing in A, here's the major third to A. It's here. See, like that would be in A blues. Here'd be the first chord. And I would play some lead maybe. Then we go to the D. And instead of playing this D, like I did before, I'll play my favorite inversion. Now here's the third to a D. You can also move it and slide it a little bit like this. And then back down to the A again. Then you go to the 5 change. See, there's the third of E, the It starts there, and then the 4 change, and then the 1 again. So that's that. Okay, now the second aspect of rhythm is probably the most important. It's the part that you really got to, take some time to get down. It's something that usually is inside you anyway, but it's the right hand. You can't really do anything unless your right hand is steady. Now, the simplest way to go about showing you this is what I have found out is that if you can keep your right hand going constantly, just in a quarter note, what I call a constant quarter note pulse. I'm going to show you this stuff in E just because it's an easy key. It's open E. You keep this right hand going like a constant pulse like this, quarter notes. Right? Now that's just the right hand only. Now it's going down. It's just going to keep going down. It's going to stay steady like this. Now, if I want to add my left hand in there, I don't even have to think about it. I'll just keep doing this with my right hand, and I'll start maybe walking a little bass with my left hand like this. And then if I went to A, and I could goof around like this. Now if I want to catch some upbeats on the way up like that, I just keep doing this with my right hand, right? And I start hitting on the way up. My pick's already on the way up. I don't have to consciously think of the upbeat. It's already there because I'm grooving right hand down strokes like this. I'm concentrating on those down beats, the quarter notes, and I start adding upper notes and stuff and goofing around like this. There you go. So what you got is the basic constant pulse is enabling you to play rhythm consistently like this. And now if it helps you, a lot of times, you see a guy going like this, tapping his foot when he's playing, See, that right foot doing like this is helping me know exactly where the 1 is. So if I hear something in my head and I want to goof around, jam, I don't have to worry about losing track of where I'm at. It's just like a natural thing. You start getting your body into this thing like this, and it helps you a lot. And as far as banging your head, you see a lot of rock and roll guys, doing like this, like Angus Young. That guy plays some of the best rhythm I've ever heard in my life, and so does Malcolm Young, his brother, and the other Young, Stevie, that plays rhythm for them sometimes. Those guys are banging their head all the time, and that helps them a lot. Whatever it takes to help you with rhythm, do it. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is slide guitar. It's probably the easiest way to play the blues that's ever been invented, is playing slide, because the idea behind it is the guitar is tuned to a chord. So in a normal tuning, if you go like this, that's what you hear, right? Well, to play slide, there's a lot of different tunings guys use. Some guys tune to G, an open G chord. Some guys tune different ways. I myself, nobody really taught me this. I figured it out myself. I tune to an open D chord, and the way you do it is you take your low E and you tune it down a whole step so that it's in tune with your D string. Okay, you leave the A string alone. Now what you got there is a root, a fifth, and an octave. Then you take your G string and you tune it down a half step. Now that's your major third now. That G is now an F sharp, which is a major third. And then you take your B string down a whole step. Then you take your high E down a whole step. Okay, that's close enough for rock and roll, as they say. Now the slide. This is a metal slide. Now, a lot of people use a lot of different things for slide. You can use a beef bone. You can use, you can grab somebody by the hand and use their finger. You could use a beer bottle. Some people use a mic stand on stage when they want to, show off. You can use anything, an ashtray, anything that's hard and, got a hard surface on it that won't be too heavy and press down the strings. Another thing you got to remember that's important is the action on the guitar has to be up high. The strings have to be pretty far away from the neck of the guitar when you play slide. Now what I do, the hole in this slide is a little too big for my finger. So if I put it on, it's going to want to just sort of slide around like this. It's going to want to fall off. And if I want to play normal left-hand stuff with the slide on, it might get in the way. So what I do is I take like a piece of paper, a matchbook cover or something like that to make like just a little spacer to stick in there so that the slide only comes down to this knuckle so I can bend it. See, I can bend my finger. It acts just like a finger now. Okay? If I did it right, it would anyway. Okay, so then some basic slide stuff. Okay, you got the tuning, right? Okay, now that's your 1 chord. Okay, now the 4 chord would be, a fourth above that, which would be right here, the 5th fret. And then the 1. And then the 5 is here. And then 4, 1. Okay? Now, there's also some basic riffs that are associated with slide. Now, the tuning is all screwed up, so, that might make you think like, well, where did all those scales go that you showed me before? Now the strings are all tuned different and, I don't know where I am. Well, don't worry about it. So there's like slide has its own sort of concept that goes with it. All you got to remember is that's your root. This is your 4 change. That's your 5 change, and that's your root again. Now you've also got the octave up here. That's another starting point. It's just an octave higher than this. It's the same. Now the 5th to here, or I should say the 4th to there would be, it's an octave higher than that, and the 5th is, that's an octave higher than this. Okay? So for some basic riffs, all you got to do is just sort of experiment. That's just how I taught myself to play slide. Just if you're in the 1 chord, just start doing like this. Refer back to like the right hand rhythm I showed you, the quarter note pulse, okay? Okay, and you start sliding. You notice my right hand is not changing at all. Then you go to the 4. Now the 5. You can even play licks on that 5 chord too, See, I'm just moving it around, experimenting like this, and making sure that while I'm on that 5 chord, I come back to that root, and I root myself, in whatever chord I'm playing over. So the 5 change to the 4 to the 1. We'll go like this. And we resolve to the 5. Okay, now I'm going to show you some pretty cool licks that are in this open D tuning. You come up here to you start on the 12th fret and you go, it's kind of hard to see my fingers, I guess, but okay, that's so that's you got to watch my right hand closely when I do that so you see which string I'm hitting, because the slide's covering up the whole guitar, but watch my right hand. You can also bring it up here on the B and the G string and play. And then up a whole step from there. Then when you get to the A, it's like I showed you before in playing the changes. You play the A chord. Same lick. So that slide is one way that you can have a whole lot of fun playing the guitar. Just tune it up the way I showed you, and just start messing around, and use that right hand rhythm, you know, with the constant thing, and bang your head and stomp your feet, or do whatever you need to do to keep your rhythm together, and just go for it, man. Pretty easy, huh? All right, we're going to play some slide now. This is in the key of open D, like I showed you before. This is just a basic 1-4-5 12-bar blues. We slide and we shuffling. It goes like this: 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. All right, now we're going to do that again, and I'm just going to play rhythm, and you break out your slide, and you do along with us. You play the lead this time, all right? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. See how easy that is? All right, now let's get back into these lessons. Okay, why am I doing this? You're probably asking yourself. Well, the next thing we're going to talk about is bends and vibrato. And believe it or not, this, like, is actually part of how you make a vibrato. Now, when I was first learning how to play guitar, I ran across this guy. He watched me play. And he said, he saw my technique. I had my thumb over the top of the guitar like this, and I was playing, you know, some stuff. Oops, got to turn it up first. And he said, oh man, your technique is really bad. You know, you're supposed to have your thumb behind the neck like this. You know, it's the only way you can play properly. And you know, and I said, hey buddy, don't tell me how to play guitar. I watched Jimi Hendrix, B.B. King, and guess what? These guys are legends, they're monsters, and that's what they do. The best way to make a vibrato is to be able to take this thumb and hook it over the top of the guitar like this. It gives you like an anchor, like a grip, and you can hold the neck like that. And what you're doing when I saw B.B. King play one time, I noticed he was doing like this. Right? And I'm going, wow, that's cool. He's like doing like, so that's how you do that. I was trying to do it like by moving my finger, just like this. And that wasn't really working. It was sort of out of control. And, you know, the thumb over the top is real important because it gives you that root place. Now you can play the vibrato with your first finger like this. With your second finger, it's still basically the same thing. With the third finger, it's still the same thing. And with your pinky, it's kind of iffy, you know, using your pinky for vibrato. Most of the time, I don't even really do that. But if by chance, you know, it comes to a situation where you have to do that, it's still basically the same thing. But I kind of think of this finger and this finger, the pinky and the third finger, as a unit, you know. So you're kind of really doing it the way you were doing it before. You just got this pinky in the way. And as far as bending notes goes, that's just, you know, pretty much obvious what that's for. You're bending the string up to the note that you want to play, rather than going like this. You're going. And hopefully you're bending it up to the right pitch. You're not bending it too far. That sounds awful, or not far enough. Right? You got to get it right up there. You got to use your ears. Okay? Now, there's another aspect of bending notes. You can bend a note up to where you can easily play another note that's not bent with your first finger. You're bending with this finger. You're playing another note with this finger, and you're ending up with a unison, two notes, like this. You're bending up here, and you're playing this note. And you're getting this. It gives you fatness. You know, like I keep coming back to Jimi Hendrix. That's my biggest influence. Manic Depression on the solo, he goes. Right? That's just bending to make a unison thing and getting a fat sound. Now, you don't always have to use vibrato. There's, you know, you can overuse vibrato. And a lot of guys maybe use it, they vibrato a little too fast. I think to be really tasteful, the best thing to do is to temper the vibrato and do it kind of slow, you know, almost like a singer, you know, like Joan Baez kind of has like, you know, like a vibrato. It sounds like someone's going like on her throat. And other singers, you know, they sing like maybe soul singers, and they'll sing like, hey, kind of like, you know, more tempered. Well, that's my approach. I'll give one of these like this. You know, he makes it sing a little better, like, you know. So anyway, that's basically all there is to bending. It's just something you got to really practice. You got to work on this, hooking the thumb over the top, and getting a good grip. It helps to have a calluses on your fingers from practicing a lot. It keeps your fingers from slipping off the strings. But you know, bending is like, there's major amounts of bending when you're playing blues. You're going. Now, there's also different ways you can bend while I'm at this. You know, you can bend, this is the strongest finger to bend with, this third finger. But, you know, to get more interesting, you know, playing happening, you can bend, you have to be able to bend with this finger too. And that's hard because it takes a lot of strength. You got to really be able to squeeze that neck and not lose your grip on the string. Now, a good example of why that would be important, okay, bending the string like this. See, I'm pulling down. You can bend upward like this, or you can bend down with this finger. Now, what I would do a lot of times is instead of just playing a lick like, and using this finger for that final note, I will deliberately play that last note with the first finger, and that gives me a sort of an attack on the note that you wouldn't get otherwise, like this. Instead of doing it like this, I'd go like this. That gives you that kind of voodoo thing. I mean, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Hendrix, they all always use that a lot, you know. And when you're bending on the high E string, it comes in real handy to be able to bend with the first finger and bend up. Now that's probably the hardest bend there is. It's even hard for me to do, and I've been playing a long time. And what you do is you just... Now you've heard that blues lick a million times, haven't you? The only way you can do that is by using that finger and bending up like that. And then, you know, to continue that basic concept, I'll do a bend up here high, and then I'll work my way down through the pentatonic basic scale down to an octave below, and I'll do that thing, and I'll end it with this first finger, just to show you how much different it sounds, okay? So that's basically all there is to bends and vibrato. Just remember, don't overuse vibrato, and you'll be all right. Okay, on this part, this is called You Supply the Lead. I'm going to show you some examples of the different types of scales we talked about before from different Kingdom Come songs and other stuff. The first time I'm going to do it, I'm going to play the lead. The second time, I'm going to play just rhythm, and you're going to supply the lead. The first one is in F sharp. It's the basic pentatonic or blues scale, and it's from the solo on 17. It goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Did you get that? Now we're going to do it again, only this time you play the lead. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, another good example of the basic blues scale can be found in the solo from Get It On. We're going to do that. That's in key of A, and it goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, an example of the relative pentatonic scale. This is actually the same scale, but it's just in the key of F sharp. This can be found in the second half of the Get It On solo, and that part goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now we're going to do both of those sections back to back, and you supply the lead. The first one, remember, is basic pentatonic for the first half. It's in A. And the second half will be relative pentatonic. You're still playing in the key of A, but it's the F sharp minor pentatonic scale, and it's relative to the A. Okay, and it goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, this next sequence is going to be an example of the modified blues scale. This is the blues scale where you just add the sharps and flats, the half steps in between the other notes. And this will be in the key of F sharp again. It's an example taken from Pushin' Hard from the first Kingdom Come album. This is the solo. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, now we're going to do it again, only this time you supply the lead. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, this next example is going to be for the relative modified blues scale. It's basically doing the same thing to the relative scale that you did to the basic scale, which is just adding half steps in between. This will be blues in the key of A, but you'll notice we are playing that F sharp scale again, but don't let that scare you. We're also going to be changing from the A to the D and back to the A and to the E and the D and back to the A. It's a 12-bar blues. So I will be playing relative to each chord while we play. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now we're going to do that again, only this time you supply the lead, all right? 1, 2, 3, hit! Okay, now I'm going to show you a couple of finger exercises just to build up strength. Just consider this a little bonus. Now, we didn't really get much into hammer-ons. You know, that's something that, you know, you might already know about or whatever. But to strengthen your hands, you're going to need to be able to do this based on this. Okay, I'm hammering off with this finger like that. Okay, now, to develop the strength to do that a lot, the best way to do it is by starting with just these two fingers, do like this. And try to do it fast. And try to just keep doing it. I mean, my hand's starting to get tired already. And then, when you're done with that finger, you do this finger. You know, and then you do it with this finger. Okay, well, that's a good exercise. Another one, I heard John McLaughlin play a long time ago. Now, he's not a blues player. He's a real fast ripping player, but I heard him play some stuff that was so fast with his right hand I couldn't believe it. And I sat down and I thought, well, how fast can I move my right hand, you know? I mean, this guy was doing stuff like, you know, and I was going, God, how's he doing that? I could barely even just go, like that's about how fast I could go. And I thought, well, I'm just going to sit here and just practice that until I get it down. And I literally sat there and went like this, just on an open G string or any open string. I just went, just down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. And I just kept making it faster and faster and faster and faster. You know, and that's a good thing to do. Just sit there and do that. You know, you can be watching television or anything, not even thinking about what you're playing, and you'll be developing strength in your right hand just by sitting there and going. That way you'll be able to go. someday if you want to play like a speed metal guy. Okay, now another really important thing to think about, it's very, very important, is your sound. Now, I didn't have a Marshall amp for a long time. And, you know, people said, ah, yeah, he's pretty good, you know, he's all right. The reason was, I think they were missing half of what I was playing, what I was hearing in my head, and what I was feeling in my heart, because my equipment wasn't projecting what I was trying to project. Now, your sound is everything. I mean, your sound is your voice. I mean, imagine Axl Rose with Elmer Fudd's voice, you know? Even though he's a great singer, you know, if he had Elmer Fudd's voice, you know, I guess it just sort of tells you one thing, huh? So, the first source of, you know, your sound, obviously, is your guitar. Now, I play a 62 Stratocaster. I recommend a Stratocaster or a Gibson Les Paul, you know, a quality guitar. The wood is very important. And I have actually sat in a music store and played Strats, and I could tell without even plugging it into an amp if it was a good Strat or not. You can hear the resonance that's in the wood. And you can even tell by looking at a Strat, the neck, okay? Now right here, this point of the nut, right here, that's where the string is touching the guitar. Right here, this little piece right here, and right here on the bridge, okay? That's the only places it's really touching when you're playing an open note, okay? Now all your sustain and everything is coming from this and through, resonating through here. You need density through here, okay? Now when you play a note, you're playing it on a fret, so what's underneath that fret has also got to be dense. And hopefully, all the way up the neck, you have a uniform density. There's no hollower spots in the neck. And the way to look for that, without even hearing the guitar, the way to look for it is to look at the grain of the neck, okay? This grain on this 62 Strat is really, really tight. I mean, like the rings in the tree are really close together. That means it's dense. And if you look right here, you can see how tight that grain is. And on this side, I guess, you can see the grain is really tight, and it's also tight up here. It's tight all the way down. And the way you can test a guitar for a good neck is just take the G string on a Strat is notoriously the most dead string. You just play each note all the way up, every fret. And you shouldn't have any notes that lose volume or sound like the tonal qualities are different. You'll notice this guitar, if I pick with equal force all the way up, the notes will sound exactly the same volume. No dead spot. No dead spots. Okay? Now that's the beginning. Okay, now another thing that's real important is the amp. Now, Marshall amps, I'm not here to like endorse Marshall or anything, or I don't work for Marshall, but Marshall amps, the sound of a Marshall defined what we identify as the sound of a ballsy rock guitar. I mean, Marshall wrote the book on that. There's other companies that make good heads too. High watt, boogie heads are excellent. Seldano amps are relatively new on the market. They're really excellent too. But even those amps sound the best through a Marshall cabinet, Marshall 4x12 cabinet. And the reason for that is just like the same reason why a guitar sounds good or doesn't sound good. It's the wood. Now Marshall, in the construction of their cabinets, they use 13-ply birch wood. It's birch and it's like plywood, 13 layers thick. It's about this thick. Now, I'm going to go over here. Handle that guitar for me, please. Okay, this is a Fender amp with just an open back on it. Now, I'm going to go up to it and hit it. Like, think of it as a drum, okay? I'm going to knock on it. Kind of a hollow, crappy sound, I mean, it's a fine amp for what its, purpose is suited for, but for hard rock and blues and, playing with some impact, that just won't do. You go over here to the Marshall cabinet that I've been using for this whole video, and you thump on it. You hear that noise? And just tells you right there. So you know, that's really important. And another thing is, as far as the settings on the Marshall amp, what I use, now there's a myth that's been perpetuated by a lot of players, I think, in hard rock. I remember guys telling me this, oh yeah, Marshalls, you know, they're easy to set up. You just turn everything up all the way, you know. Now, hand me that guitar. Now I'm going to show you something. Okay, here's the way my guitar is set up right now. I have the presence is anywhere from halfway up to all the way up, depending on the room and how bright you want it to sound. The bass, my particular guitar is pretty bassy, so I only got the bass on 4. You usually don't need a lot of bass with a Marshall because the cabinet has got a lot of oomph to it. The middle is on 6, the treble is on 6. The master volume, you know, basically sounds best above 2. That's when the punch starts to come in a little bit. But the gain or preamp volume, this is how much distortion or whatever. A lot of people think you got to turn this up all the way to get a good sound out of a Marshall. I say the exact opposite is true. I never go up above about 7.5 on this JCM 800 type, the type with the master and preamp volumes, because the more distortion and sustain that you get by turning it up, you lose a corresponding amount of punch. Now I'll show you right now. I'll turn this up all the way and I'll hit the guitar with the amp set the way I have it, and I'll play a little bit of rhythm, and you listen to how punchy and percussive it is, okay? Okay? Now, I'm going to turn that preamp up all the way and everything else up all the way, except the master volume because I don't want to blow it down the roof. And listen to how much muddier and disgusting it sounds. So if I want to play some notes that want to cut through, okay, I got a lot of nice sustain and stuff. But when I turn it back down, listen how much more pow there is to the notes. It cuts through. It'll cut through the band. It'll cut above everything. And also, if you're ever recording and you want to double a guitar part, you know, you lay down a rhythm and then you want to lay it down again. Well, if you turn the amp up all the way to where all that garbage is coming out of there, and then you double that, you're doubling the garbage. You're getting twice as much garbage. So you've got the signal you want, okay, and then you want to double the signal you want. Well, if you've got all this extraneous garbage noise on there, and you double it, you're just doubling the extemporaneous garbage noise. You're actually getting further away from what you were after than you're getting close to it. So when you're going to double a guitar part, you would, rather than turn things up or whatever, turn things down. I mean, 4 guitars that are this clean are going to sound so much better than 4 guitars that are like this. You would not believe the difference. Next time, if you got a friend who has a 4-track or something, or you've been in a multi-track studio, just try that, and you won't believe. You'll get more power by turning down the amp before you double stuff than you will by turning it up. These are just a couple of things, you know. There's lots of different things about sound that I don't really have time to get into, but the main thing to go by is your ears, you know. And what I like may not necessarily be what you like, but what you got to go by, this is a rule that I've always applied. If I don't like my sound, I don't play well. If I play a couple notes and I don't like what I hear, I lose my desire, you know. I don't get off on it. But if I play something and it sounds really good to me, I go, ooh, yeah, man, that's great, you know. Ooh, and it just inspires me to play even better. So, you know, that's why equipment is important, because your sound can inspire you to play better than you ever even imagined. All right, I'd like to thank you for joining me here on Power Rock Guitar System. I'm Danny STAG, and you know, if you study everything I've showed you in this video and really practice it and work hard at it, you know, and work your way through it, slow it first and get a little faster, and maybe tell your girlfriend you won't see her for about 10 years because you'll be practicing, and you know, maybe send me all your money so you'll be poor, and no, just kidding, don't send me your money. But you know, it's a lifestyle thing, you know. You got to really work at it. You got to feel it. You got to want it. And like, hey, there was a time when my best friend was my guitar, man. My friends would let me down. I'd come home. I'd light a candle. I'd put the guitar on my lap. I'd start playing, man. And I felt better about life, you know, and you could do the same thing. So, again, I'd just like to thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Hang in there. Keep practicing.